All right, I'm trying again now. So let me know if you can hear me. Uh, does it look like there's a bit of a delay again? Because I thought we had cracked that nut and I'm on the hard wire. Um, so hi, Quindy and Bob and Julie and a little Kung Fu Theater. All right, I will try the thing that we tried before. Okay, so I guess let me know if that looks any better. That is really weird because I was pretty sure that it was the hardware problem. So I have Valander and Ardius and Smallish Sam and Automama. I think I saw Anara earlier and some other people still off. All right, I will try extending the time. Let's see if that looks any better. Or if it's getting closer, if it's getting further away, I don't know. I admit to be mystified. I thought we solved this problem. Maybe Justin will come in and let us know. So I see that my other tech support is lurking in the background. You don't know what's making this happen, so. You think I went past? Okay, now I went too far. It's plugged in, isn't it? I mean, it has to be, or I wouldn't have internet, wouldn't it? Okay. Better, worse? It looks a little closer to me. Much better. Okay. I will try to talk to Justin about whether there's more we can do about that. So let's see. I like to give people a few minutes to get here. So I thought I'd kind of review. I think this is the 4th episode, so I'm going to review some of the. I'm going to turn this off for now. Some of the things from previous episodes. So last week, I'll switch views actually. Last week we did kind of. So I started with this figure as I had painted him for a game, and then I did kind of a critique and an overview of if this was something that was submitted in the MSP Open contest at ReaperCon, or if you just asked an experienced teacher or friend for some tips, what feedback might you get, and then what would it look like if you tried to address those things. So this is a slightly upgraded version. I've taken the after photos. I still need to edit them, and I'll be putting those up on my blog with kind of an overview of the changes I did. So since the one thing about painting live is I couldn't really have the before example to compare while I was doing it. So you're going to have to wait and look at photos, but that should go up on my blog this week, which is right up there at the top. If you didn't get to watch that, you can watch it on Twitch, or it's now up on Reaper's YouTube channel as well. And then the week before, or last week, the week before that, sorry, I'm very bad at these things, I did swatches of some new colors. So I did swatches of the colors that are in the ReaperCon swag boxes that are up for pre-order right now. I didn't have all of the colors. I'm hoping that they'll arrive and I'll be able to complete these. And the blog post with the blacksmith, I'm gonna attach these to the end of that. But if you'd like to see the color swatch live, because some of these colors, like the metallics, they don't really show up well in a scan or a photograph. They look better here on camera or live in the hand. But hopefully I'll get the rest of those. I might have a question for you about that later in the stream. And then I also swatched the paint sets that are going to come to the people who back them in the Kickstarter. So there are 2 sets, and these ones were all new colors. And I also talked about how and why you could do swatching if you wanted to. So I talked about different kinds of paper and other methods for doing swatches. So if you think that that's something that might be useful to you, you might want to check out that video, which is also on Twitch and now up on the YouTube. Hi, Nomad Zeke. I'm glad you made it. Clavicus. Francis, thank you for extending your subscription. So that was the swatches. While we're talking about paint, and I've had people like text me or comment on my Facebook page about this in the past, so I figured it was worth mentioning. Reaper every year does a holiday set of colors. And every year people who live in very cold climates and don't like to order paint when the weather is cold and it might freeze, say, wouldn't you like to do Christmas in July? So they're doing Christmas in June. Maybe the boxes will last until July. I don't know. But I pulled off the colors. I might actually use this one today, so I had that off to the side. That's coal black. This is ginger cookie, which is a nice shadow color for like teeth and horns and bones and stuff like that. Christmas wreath, nice bright green. Holly berry, which is a good vivid red. Hearth fire is a nice orange. Turkey brown, this is a fairly transparent color, but that makes it useful for like washes and glazes and stuff. Why does the one bottle have a black cap? Just they probably only had black caps when they bottled it that way, or I don't think I lost the cap and replaced it. It's possible this was actually from, because I think this was a color at like one of the artist cons or something like that. So it's possible that my bottle is not from the set and it's from something earlier. I have not standardized the colors of my bottle caps. It's not a big issue to me. There's even a few gray ones wandering around from, I think they could only get gray for a while. This is a color that was something that Anne found was kind of missing from, there was a project she had and this was kind of missing that she needed. So she mixed that, and it is a nice, I like these kinds of colors for mixing highlights instead of, straight white. Frosty blue. Then these ones, I guess, aren't going to look like a lot. This is Sparkling Snow, is a metallic, which you can barely tell from my little cap. And then this is Peppermint White, which is white, so it's also hard to tell on the cap. But if, I'll probably ask later in the show, so you guys can think about this now. Don't answer yet. Answer later. If I get the other ReaperCon swag box colors, next week I could swatch those and also swatch these for anyone who's thinking about this, if you're on the fence about whether you need this paint set. I'm just going to put that off to the side. Okay, so now let's get on to today's topic, which is the first show that I did, I painted all these skeletons. So I had the base coats on them. And then I wanted to experiment with doing different wash colors and seeing what happened. And it had been my intention during the show to also do the same experiment on these. Yes, people in the chat, Valender's mentioning that Holly Berry's greatest strength is that it's an opaque bright red. So if those of you in the chat who have some of the holiday colors want to share the things you love about them, please do for other people in the chat who might be wondering. So my personal favorites include the ginger cookie and the golden glow and the coal black. And I feel like there's another one. Turkey brown for various specific uses. So I did the washes on the skeleton parts, but we had technical difficulties and I'm still working out how long does it take to do things live and stuff like that. So there wasn't time to get to the green, make sure my light's on, the green grass and experimenting with that. So I wanted to go back to this because I've had these guys kind of taken up room on a shelf, so I want to finish some thoughts with them. There's one or two other things that I might be able to do with them on stream. I might experiment with showing some batch painting tips and then also inviting people who batch paint a lot more than I do to come and share tips in the chat. Because admittedly, that is not a thing I do a lot. I've done it a little bit. But the thing about doing it on the bones color, and I think this guy, yeah, so this guy's, I think it's just one coat of the base coat color. Normally I would do too before I applied the wash. But so this was kind of the starting color for all of these skeletons. But this is a fairly neutral color. So if you imagine mixing this in with a red or a blue or a green, you're going to get kind of a muted version of that. So although I was a little surprised that most of the colors that we experimented with worked out pretty well for these skeletons, I guess the surprise was more that they just weren't goofy on skeletons. I'm expecting to have different results doing it on a saturated bright green like this. So if you start, I'm going to try like a magenta or a blue or something. And I think we will find that we get a little more interaction and things that are unexpected that work and things that really don't work. But that's what the fun of this is going to be, is doing that experiment, which I encourage all of you to do experiments as well. So most of these are the skeletons that I worked on previously, but I had a few extra left over from doing a class for virtual ReaperCon last year, and I thought, why not just do the bases on them anyway, so we can do a few extra colors. And then I also have a few, if for a while in the paint kits, when they ran out of this skeleton, they would sub in this guy, and he has rocks for a base instead of grass. So I have 2 or 3 of these, and we can do a similar experiment on rocks, and it's going to be a little closer to the skeleton. I think it's going to actually, most of the colors we try will work. It'll just be interesting to see if you can get kind of some interesting effects instead of just using plain black for rock. I like to mix colors into my rocks and make them a little more interesting. So Carrie Michael Cosby says, I like cold black and sparkling snow for dragons, hearthfire, and golden glow for the obvious fire, and frosty blue is such a beautiful blue, not just for snow. Nomad Zeke uses ginger cookies for lots of things. Balrog John likes it for shadows on flesh, and Valander likes it for suedes. So it is a very useful color. I like that one a lot. Before I get into painting those guys, I did just thought I would go through, for the people who didn't make it the first time, there's kind of been several generations of the Learn to Paint Kit figures. So this skeleton is from the Learn to Paint Kit. And I think he's out. Now I've lost which one is which. So this is one of the originals. So this is the original formula, very bendy bones. Which is nice because they're super durable, but you'll get some of them where the bow is bent a bit like this, and it's like a little too close to his head or something. So this originally was white, and I don't think I have any of them unpainted enough to tell. Maybe this guy. And it can be hard to see the details, and it's really hard to take pictures of. So over time, Reaper switched to more of this kind of a color for the original bones. And you can see the detail a lot better, and it photographs much better. But then they've now started making something called Bones USA, and these are produced in the USA, and it's a much stiffer material. So this is the original bones, and I'm not going to pull that hard on this because it is possible to break this off with enough repeated or excessive force. And that's kind of your trade-off. So his sword is a lot straighter, even though he's been shoved in a box in my closet. But it is a little more fragile. So there's always a trade-off and everything. But you get a lot of really nice detail on these Bones USA. I think people who are going to start getting the new kits, their miniatures are going to look better than mine did, because I had the original. Like, look at the detail on this chainmail. Which, do I have the original guy? Yes. No. Nope, that's a Bones. There he is. So it's a little bit deceiving because of the color difference, but if you look at it closely, you can see some detail in the fur, especially, that looks a lot better in the new version. Because Reaper is always learning and growing and improving their process, I think. Well, the teeth are pretty good on the original, but they're even better on the new one. So, I don't know if you just order packs of this skeleton yet, whether they're coming in the Bones USA or if they're still in the original. That is not one of those things that I know. Oh, and while I have them here, these are the original colors. And this is from the washes that I mixed on stream. So these are the colors that we experimented with on the skeletons. And there's a picture on my blog where you can see the finished bones and all that stuff. Are these 2 Bones USA miniatures available now? That I don't know. So I don't know if they're in the kits yet and if they're in retail. I think they're in the kits, but I don't know if they're in retail, and that's not a thing that I am privileged to know. But you could ask a Reaper person, like maybe John will be able to answer that question for you. All right, so mixing washes. I'm going to be mixing a bunch, so I'm going to use a palette like this. You certainly can mix washes on a wet palette, but or any, like a flat tile, whatever you use to paint with. But if I jostle it or have to move it around to show different views, there's a good chance that I would spill it. So you should be able to get one of these in a big box store or a craft store for under $2 US. There are other options. I may actually use this one, which is a porcelain version. And this will naturally cost more, and it's a little harder to get. You'll probably have to order online. The appeal of this is it's much easier to clean. And there are lots of other kinds of porcelain palettes. The most common one to find, and you may be able to find this in a craft store, is they call it a flower palette or a 7-well palette. And you can see that this one badly does need cleaning. Because I have been inattentive to that. And I was at a convention once and I found like this little version that is much more suitable for miniature painters. Because the problem with these big wells is that's a lot more area that's exposed to the air, which means things are going to be evaporating quicker. So these are intended for watercolor painters, and they are painting, big pieces of paper. They need bigger mixes of paint. So if you watch Anne's show, this is the palette that she uses, and I love these. I have 3. And you can see that it's a much smaller well, and it's a deep well, so it slows down the evaporation compared to one of these. But this you definitely have to order away for. Anne and I got ours at Cheap Joe's online. I have seen them on Amazon, but I would check prices because sometimes the prices on Amazon are way crazy compared to just ordering from Cheap Joe's with shipping. And Cheap Joe's will probably have most of these other shapes and configurations of palettes too. A friend of mine who had bought some of these and found them not useful for miniature painting gave me some of these, and then I had some others for watercolor painting, is why I have an excessive number of these things. But my foolish shopping choices are an opportunity to share information with you, is how I think of it. And then if you're just mixing 1 or 2 washes, keep your blister packs. Those are great for doing messy things so you don't have to mess up the rest of your palette. And there may be other, lids of Coke cans or Coke bottles or something. So I will talk about how to mix a wash, which most of you probably know, but just in case. And I have a video on my YouTube channel, which is Bird with a Brush, that goes into this in a little more detail. But I don't like to use a ratio because the number of drops that I'm going to need to thin this pure black versus the number of drops that I'm going to need to dilute this pine green are going to be different, because this paint is much more opaque than this paint. And really what we're trying to do when we mix a wash is create an opacity that is the correct one for a wash. And the correct opacity for a wash is something like this. So you deposit color, but you can still see the text underneath. And that's what these pieces of paper are. These are me testing washes. I also test glazes this way, but I go for something more like this, where it's just a touch of color with a glaze. So this is why I don't like to answer the question, how many drops of water to a drop of paint do you need for a wash? So what this is if you watch the video on my channel, I demonstrate this principle. I grabbed every single miniature paint and a few other paints I have that are black, and I did them full strength, and then I thinned them each with 2 drops of water. And you can see that the results with 2 drops of water are different, even though it's the same color. So that's why I don't like to do the ratio thing. But if you want to go on, and I did a similar thing, and this I think is in my blog, it's on the video, with more saturated colors of paint. And it's a similar thing. So the green is pretty much, this is just one drop of paint and one drop of water. The green and pink are pretty much ready to go for washes, but some of these would need more water than this. So I did, if you do the kit instructions, which I brought here in case I forget how to do the dry brushing stage, like what colors I did for that, because I might not remember. What you do is you use pure black, and I do give the drops ratio in that because it's for new painters. And I painted this skeleton, which is kind of this guy is painted by the book, so he's sort of my comparison example. So I did his grass that started out this color with the black wash, and then later we'll do the dry brush stage with the out of the book colors, so then we can compare. I'm going to use the same colors to dry brush all of them. That's what we did with the skeletons, and I think that makes it we're only testing one variable in. So I pulled out a few more paints than I have figures, I think. So we may be doing a little bit of voting. I think I will start with, and I guess I'll just be random about which guy who got the original wash color gets a wash color now. So I pulled out 3 greens. This one's kind of a khaki green. That's one of the new Reapercon colors. This one's all like an even duller green, the rotting wood. And then this is a more saturated green. So I think we should only do one of the, I think I should do a saturated green, and I'll work on that. But you guys can vote 1 if you'd like to see rotting wood, and vote 2 if you'd like to see goggler green as a wash on this. And as ever, I have shake your paints more than you're seeing me do this on stream. I shake them right before I start the stream. So I just have the original pokey tool. My understanding is that there is a cool new pokey tool in one of the swag boxes as well. But if you don't have a pokey tool, where did I put mine? But I don't seem to have one anymore with me. I tried to keep it here to show people, but you can unroll a paper clip, and it works well to get the little piece of plastic or dried paint, whatever's causing a problem there. So that's pine green. I'm telling this for myself because I'll probably have to watch the video after. So this is just water, and somebody asked about the slow ones. This dropper tip, I don't think it does anymore, but it used to dispense the drops a little slower. So I'm going to start with 2 and see where we are. And I'll do my test. And because, as I expected, that green was fairly transparent compared to black, pure black at least, that should be fine for a wash. So I'll get my first victim, who I think was the one who had the black wash originally, and I'll just slop that on. So this is sort of a control too, almost, in that this will probably look even better than the black one does because it's a darker version of the color that's already there, and that's a pretty safe color choice for a wash. That doesn't mean it's the only color choice. That's partly why we're doing these experiments, because you can get some fun effects by mixing it up. So let's see. It does not have a cool skull on an unfurled paper clip. That is true. And then the extra super cool pokey tool is available to be won on the Crow's Nest, which airs tomorrow. And that has the Crow's Nest kind of logo sculpt on there that Julie sculpted. And the only way to win one, or the only way to get one, is to win, or I think guests. I think from now on guests also get one, unless you're Bobby Jackson and you put min wax on things. So that is the pine green. So I'm gonna have to put these guys aside to dry, obviously. All right, so I think there were a few more votes for 1 than for 2. So that looks like rotting wood gets the nod. If I end up having a leftover guy, maybe we can come back to the Goggler green. This might be interesting because this is such a unsaturated color, well, not less saturated color compared to the Naga green. Naga green is the color that all the base coats are. That I'm really curious to see what's going to happen with that kind of color. Not sure why I'm having trouble getting this out despite the pokey tool. So I am just using water. If you find that you don't like washes to be so runny, you can use brush on sealer or matte medium instead. And if you have trouble with, sometimes people get kind of ring marks, or like, it's like when you get a stain on your coffee table and it kind of concentrates on the edge. If you get washes where you have a problem with that, you can add a little bit of flow improver. There's a bit of flow improver in every Reaper paint. So if you've been having trouble with other brands but not with Reaper, that's probably why. And you can just get some flow improver and add them to your other brands when you make washes. I believe this is also a somewhat transparent color, so we're actually going to have to see if I've now thinned it too much. I think that's about right. It's not as dark, so I could probably go just a little bit more paint. Because that's the, when you were picking colors for a wash, I'll probably try to do a show just on that at some point. But you need to go darker, because that's, shadows are darker. And, well, Julie, you shouldn't have to win one. You and Bob shouldn't have to win one. So we'll just think that I did one of mine still in the mail. But to be fair, I don't think I did the instructions that you're supposed to do when you win things. So this is a value scale. So if we look at the green of the base, it's probably somewhere around here. I have to choose a color that's darker than that, or it's not really going to make shadows on that. Now, when you start playing with weird colors, sometimes you don't have to go a lot darker, and it'll still work. But in general, I'm going to want to be at least here and maybe around there for the colors that I pick. So this is a little bit, this is not a very much darker in value color than that one. Your time could come, Durham, Texas? Durham, Texas is probably what it is. All right, so let's try putting, oh yeah, this might be an eye-searing experience. I thought this might get a little more interesting than on the skeleton bone. And this doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. Sometimes you're trying to paint things that look disquieting and weird. And knowing that if you mix saturations, you can get that to happen is a useful piece of information. But as always with washes, we'll never really know what it looks like until it dries. Okay, so there's that color. Compare it to, so yeah, this green may not have been dark enough. The initial saturated green may not have been dark enough to have a strong effect, but we'll see when it's all the way dry. I don't know where to put all the things today. Okay, so now let's not get totally weird. Let's do one thing. Grand Oracle. Sorry to intrude in Rhonda's session with this, but how does one claim if they win? So I think I think you can do this right now, ! I won something, and it will give you the instructions. And you will see the thing that I didn't do after I won something, and that's why I don't have a cool crow's nest pokey tool yet. And that shows to everyone in the chat, so you don't have to do it. Like, everybody who wins on reaperlive or whatever doesn't have to do it. So now I'm going to go for a blue. We may end up doing more than one blue, but we'll see. Let's see. So I've got Ultramarine Shadow and Ritterlicht Blue. So one is a little more saturated than the other, and I think one is a little darker than the other. So I think I'll let you vote again. So Ritterlicht Blue 1, Ultramarine Shadow 2. And I will also look at the next options. I'm probably going to go with the cold black since we were talking about the holiday colors. But another option that's got a little bit of teal in it is the Grim Gray from the RVE, Reaper Virtual Expo. But that will be after we do the blues. Oh, so far it looks like we have a lot of fans of Ritterlicht Blue. But oh, there's a little bit of a comeback for Ultramarine. Ooh, now it's pretty close. All right, 1 or 2 people need to comment so I know which one. All right, I think Ritterlicht is just slightly ahead. We'll keep the Ultramarine over to the side. And if I end up having an extra skeleton, I will do that one. Okay, that was way more paint than I needed for a wash. I'm getting disorganized with where I'm putting things. The thing about this filming thing is that there is a lot less space on your desk than there used to be. So I'm actually, normally I would take the time to put this back in the bottle, but I'm not going to make you guys wait for that. Wow, that is intense. This is going to be interesting. But Ultramarine is fairly intense too. So. Let's do the test. Because even though it looks super dark, it may actually not, you know, it's still, I can see the texture there. I'm going to have 1 more drop of water, I think. Oops. Well, and then I'm going to do that. Okay. I'm going to pick this guy. The shadows on the bone are a little bit orangey brown, so I think that'll play in an interesting way with putting blue on the base. So far I would say this looks cool, but I'm not sure it looks like grass. But I have found in the past that you can get some nifty, kind of a cool look if you use something, like maybe not this blue, but you can experiment with this blue certainly, in the shadows of painting like green cloth or something like that. The reason I say not, so this blue would be fine, but if you use something this intense, you're starting to get a color changing kind of effect, which is, if that's what you want, this is a great color to do this with. If you just kind of want to add some coolness and depth to green cloth, but have it still very much read as green, this might be too much of a blue to use for that. I'm trying to keep them in order because they should dry in order too, so that's a useful piece of information. So because in honor of the Christmas in June, I'm going to use the coal black. And this is one, so it does look black coming out of the bottle, but as I add water, we should begin to see color. Not as intense as that color, but certainly some color. So it's got kind of like a greeny undertone to it. Green with just a smidge of blue, I think. And that, it might be hard to see on the screen. I can see the text under there. I think I will add just a little bit more water. I tend to like to err on the side of over dilute a glaze or a wash because it's easy to apply more. Or if, you know, if I do the first coat and it doesn't hardly do anything, like with that green, I mean, it did something, but it's not a dramatic effect. I can, you know, tweak the color or add a bit more paint back or whatever. You know, there's numerous different ways to fix that. But if I put too opaque of a paint color on and it dries, there's no way for me to take it off, because that is the beauty and the bane of acrylic paint, is that it dries really fast. And this will be interesting to compare to the black because it's almost as dark as the pure black, but I think it'll look a little more harmonious and interesting because it's got those touches of blue and green in it. So let me just check if there's anything I need to know in the chat. Hi, the real brush guy, Nomad Zeke. Let's see. Yes, T-pins are another good answer for, homemade pokey tools or hat pins. The downside of T-pins, or the advantage of, the purpose-made pokey tools, and hat pins would do this too, is it keeps paint from getting all over your fingers. Because I've used T-pins. When I run paint and takes, I said bring T-pins to help solve the blocked bottle problem, and we always get paint on our fingers. I'm going to put just a little bit more in the middle. For some reason it didn't seem like it was sticking there. So I think that color is going to work pretty well. All right, that was the coal black. Now let's get a little funky. How many guys do I have left? I think I have 4 guys left. So I was waffling between doing a real red and doing Gothic Crimson, which is kind of a magenta-ish red. And I think the magenta-ish red would be a bit more interesting, so I think we'll do that one. And then at the end we can see which of the paints that didn't make it the first time gets onto the last guy or two. Or try some stuff on the stone. Now with the stone, because when I was talking about the value thing, the stone is more like this value. The grassy green is like that. So we're going to have to choose the darker ones for the 3 stone figures. Or the 3 figures with stone bases. So that is Gothic Crimson, which again, because it is a red or magenta, is going to be a little bit transparent. There's just certain pigments are by nature transparent, or more transparent. So to keep them vivid, it's really hard to make a vivid red that also has good opacity. And this is true of yellow and orange and magenta. So yeah, I think that's because it's kind of transparent. I'm going to call that good. Let's see, who would, well, that would really stand out. Let's do it on this guy. So this was the one that had the teal blue. I think the ocean, I can't remember what the paint was called, but it was kind of a teal blue. And it ended up like having a really nice kind of ghosty spectral effect. I think it needs to be just a little darker to work. On the bone color, I mean, this does not need to be darker to work. This is actually kind of what I was talking about, where when you start going with wild colors, the value doesn't necessarily have to be as dark to work, because what's sort of happening here is green and red are complements. So when you mix them together, you get brown. Well, actually, when you mix any 2 colors together, they start to get darker, but that's kind of a different story. Complements do it for sure. So even if they start out kind of the same value, the mix of them is going to look a little different, and that is just pretty wild. Be interesting to see what that dries down to. Actually, Carrie Michael Cosby mentioned something that I did mean to say when we were talking about the holiday colors. So last week on Reaper Live, Ron said that they will not be selling that same box set this Christmas. They'll probably have new colors. So this is kind of the last chance for a while. I mean, those colors might come back, or, if everybody has a revolt about coal black, or, if we hire Bobby Jackson to whine about coal black, we might be able to get a few added to the regular line or something like that. But if you have wanted any of those colors, or you need to restock some of them, now is kind of your chance. All right, so that was the Gothic Crimson. And I also pulled out a couple of purples. This one is a bit more of a red violet, so it's got a bit of magenta in it. So I think we'll go with the Styx purple, which is more of a dull, straight purple. I don't think it's blue violet. I think it's a straight purple. Yes, the holiday set is available in the store right now. Or at least it's, when I clicked the things that are coming in May or whatever, the front page maybe needs to get updated. But it was there. That's where I actually, right before the show, I was like, oh, why don't I pull those colors off my shelf? And I just pulled up that graphic to look at those colors. So this is the Sticks Purple, which, as it's from the Bones paint line, is probably not super transparent, so I may need to add more water than I added with the Gothic Crimson. Yeah, so it's already, so when you, if you've been painting a while, you can start looking for cues like this. So I can see as the paints are starting to kind of fall back down off the palette. That's like before I did the paper test, I kind of used to test like this. I like the paper test because it's a little quicker and it's easy to share with other people. But the more you use your paints and the more you paint, the more you'll be able to start answering questions like, you know, how many drops of water do I need and stuff like that for yourself. And I think this one's just a little, I was trying to get a half a drop. All right. So this is the skeleton. So he looks kind of weird because I used this same grass green in the shadows. So I think the green actually works in the shadows of the bone. It's another kind of, it could be moss or lichen, or it could be like a weird eldritch kind of effect. But if I was painting this for real, I would not then use that same color on his base because that just looked weird. So perhaps by adding this purple to it, we can mitigate that. This is actually, this purple has a little less blue in it than I thought it did. So it kind of almost, it doesn't look the same as the magenta. I'll grab the magenta one in just a sec. But it's having a bit more of that interaction with the green than I expected. Okay. So let's grab the magenta. So there's definitely a difference between those two. But it's interesting how as soon as I started putting it on green, because green is the complement of red, it really accented the, you know, it doesn't look very pink here, but looking at it against green accents that because of the way color complements work. So for those of you who might be a little newer to working with color, you may want to get a color wheel. Also, if you go on my site, there's cannot remember what I called it now. There's something, so the main page, if you just go right there, the main page has like kind of an index to the topics, and there's a color one, and it introduces all the terms that I've been using and many more. So you can learn more about what value means, what saturation means, and how these things can affect your painting. So it's just kind of an overview, because when we end up doing videos like this, or you read articles, we kind of have to use those terms to talk about some of the effects that are happening. But another thing you can do is get one of these color wheels. So this is by the Color Wheel Company, and there's a bigger version as well. There is also, it's a different company, I think, but you can, if you prefer the cyan, magenta, yellow color theory approach, they make color wheels in that as well. And I have one, and I keep forgetting to bring it over here. You may even be able to find these in like Michael's and Joann's and stores like that. You certainly should be able to find one of these in an art store, and I would imagine it's on Amazon, and this shouldn't cost you more than $6 US. No, I mean, I'd say 10 at the outside, but I'm pretty sure that I get them for between $5 and $7. And if you look at it carefully, it'll be harder to see on here, and maybe I should do a stream one time where we talk about some, just go through the color wheel. But it explains complementary colors and split complements and triads and the tetrads, monochromatic. So these are all different kinds of color schemes. And then on this side, it has that value scale. So this rough little thing I have, it has a 10.1, which is very common. So black is value 1 and white is value 10. And you can, you know, kind of look at the value differences of the primary, you know, the main colors, the most saturated versions of colors. It will also show you if you add yellow to blue violet, you get this color. If you add red to blue, you get this color, so you can spin it around. Now, this is color theory in the sense that these are theoretical perfect colors that don't exist, because these are actual paints and pigments that have idiosyncrasies, and there's not, there's not an exact red like this. So for mixing paint point of view, sometimes paints won't do what this says. But this is still a useful guideline for understanding kind of the principles. Like when I've been kind of talking to you, like, oh, I think this will happen because this is a complement of, the red and green are complements. Right there we go. And it'll show you that. So it's just a useful thing from that point of view. Hold on. I noticed that this guy has purple on his feet, and that is weird. So let's get some of that off. And he may just end up having purple toes. We'll pretend he's in purple slime or something. But I did not put my painting spectacles on. So I may not be painting this as precisely as I would if I were less old or had my devices on. All right, so I'm just gonna go back. Yes, if you go and order a palette from Cheap Joe's, definitely throw in a color wheel if you don't already have one. And if you have trouble reading the tiny little print on this one, consider getting the larger size, which I think is $10 or $11. And it is, I mean, it's bigger than this thing. So, but definitely easier to read them. All right, so then I had a few browns, and I think I definitely want to try the red brown. So I picked mahogany brown as a red brown. Because of that red-green color complement, I'm curious whether it will kind of enhance the look or if it'll be jarring. But then we can do a vote, or I can just choose randomly or something on the paints that I didn't pick, because I'll have one skeleton left. So that was one of the paints I did pick. That's mahogany brown. There are several other red browns. That was just the first one that caught my eye off my shelf. And because this is a brown, it's probably a little more opaque than some of the colors that we have been working with previously. And I may need to, yeah, I think I need at least one more drop of water. It's still a little dark, actually. All right. This guy. So you can see that it is doing a similar thing that happened with the purple, I think, where the fact that this is a red brown becomes much more apparent as soon as I put it on top of that green. So I think for my last guy, I am going to pick a more subdued brown so that we can kind of compare that effect. Because my thinking was that a brown would probably work pretty well, like, we'd get kind of dull the green down and get more of a dead grass or grass at night kind of an effect. And that's happening, I think, but the tension between the red and the green is enough that I'm not sure if it's distracting. So I'm going to, this one has even just a smidge of red in it, I think, so I'm going to go with basic dirt for my last skeleton. And then we can start doing some comparisons of the paint that's dried a little bit. I should probably check where I am time-wise. I think we're all right. So I try to wipe these off on a paper towel. I'm not like super stringent about it. I did just clean them recently, but they will kind of cake up with paint, and I'll just get my X-Acto knife and scrape it off. I think we're having some conversations about kitties. I'm surprised that my kitty hasn't come in to say hello. She's when it's summertime, we have a enclosed porch, so it's screened in, but it's not a full room. It's not glass walls or anything. But she lives for the heat. Like, if it's under 70 degrees, she thinks the world is ending and we're all going to die. So once it's finally summer and she can go out and bake on the porch, we really just do not see her as much as we do in the winter. She loves the warmth that much. So if you've been joining her in Reaper Errant, she will be showing up a little less than she has been. I think that's good. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a little more the effect that I kind of expected with the previous brand. And then our other kitty, I don't think he's made it onto a stream yet, or I think I might have picked him up and waved him around a Reaper Errant once. He's very heavy. And he's not much of a lap cat. So he'll sit beside me, but the camera isn't set up so you can see him very easily. But usually he's hanging out with my husband because my husband gives out more treats. So he likes my husband a little better. But he had to have his teeth cleaned earlier this week, which, since a cat will not just calmly, I mean, people barely calmly sit there. I'm honestly a bit of a fraidy cat at the dentist myself, but I like it. I like having good teeth well enough that I put up with it. But they had to anesthetize him, and he was pretty much tripping balls for like a day when he came home. Like, he came home and he went out on that porch and he thought he saw a mouse or something, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't there. But then he just stayed there for like the next 12 hours because he was obsessed with catching this mouse. And he'd come in and get like food or water or something, and then he'd be like, nope, I gotta go catch the, purple polka dotted mouse that's outside. And it's like, okay, you have fun with that, buddy. It was bad enough we actually called him back the next day, and we're like, should he still be super insane and weird? And they're like, oh yeah, it can last quite a while for some pets. I'm like, okay. All right, so I want to give the couple of those to dry. So I am terrible, for some reason, I'm terrible at spotting it when people sub in the chat. So from the last broadcast and the one before, I want to thank Skies Clear for subbing, username Snow, Shadow Spawn the Assassin. So thank you, all of you. It's very kind of you to sub during my pretty new show where you really don't even know what you're getting because I mix it up every week. Like, this is what my show is like. It's just a big pile of weirdness. But I have some ideas for what I might do next week, but the next couple of months as we lead up to ReaperCon, I want to do some kind of ReaperCon focused thing. So I want to do at least one other show where I take a miniature and do the critique and then touch up on it. So I think you guys like that. I don't want to do that next week. I want to give a little more time, but I'll do at least one, and I may be able to do another one after that. I want to do a show, but I think I'll do it a little closer to ReaperCon. Talking about how to transport your miniatures to the show. Because I have found that a conundrum going to contests all these years. I've come up with a wide variety of solutions. Talk to people in case you're flying for the first time with miniatures or miniature painting equipment and you have questions about that. So I want to kind of go over that. It might not be the whole show. Oh, thank you, John. I saw that a package got sent, but I wasn't sure what was in it. So next week I think we could do a swatch show. So Reaper John very kindly sent me the colors I'm missing so I could do a swatch show on the rest of the ReaperCon colors and then the holiday colors that we just looked at in the bottle today. So perhaps that is what I will do for next week. But I would also like to ask you guys, and you don't have to answer like just right this minute. You can answer the rest of the stream, or come on my Facebook page or whatever. If there's any kind of ReaperCon or general convention going type of questions that you have, contests, what you need for classes, just if there's something that you would find useful in a stream format for me to address. So I'm taking suggestions on that, and I will continue to try to think about ideas that kind of, I don't want it to be like all ReaperCon all the time, because I know a lot of people aren't going, although there will be online virtual component as well, and I suspect that that was not the only Reaper Virtual Expo that we'll ever see that happened earlier this year. But I just wanted to throw that out there, because I have lots of ideas for shows, but I'm always open to more, and I also thought it would be interesting to kind of dial in on that specific question. All right, so let's start looking at the skeletons, and I think I'll put this here to try to make them a little easier to see. And maybe we'll zoom in just a smidge. So this was kind of our control guy that got the standard black wash. This is the one with the pine green, and it is a little light. So if you found this too harsh, this is a better answer, but I would go just a little bit darker. Like maybe I'd have mixed just a touch of black in with the pine green. And then this is the desaturated or less saturated rotting wood green. So this is still a green, but it's like a dark khaki green. Who all has ribbons besides classes and Reaper artists and such? So if you attend ReaperCon, and a lot of other conventions are doing this now too, you get ribbons for certain activities, and you can attach them to your badge. And I've seen people with ribbons longer than they are tall. And not just Aaron, who isn't very tall, or the people that like have to branch out to the side or whatever. There are some that are for other activities. So you'll get some kind of like at the check-in desk, or I can't guarantee it, but other activities would be something like there's a Sophie Says painting event, and entering the contest. You get, and there's more than one miniature for entering the contest. So I think there's like one just for entering. There's one for entering a Reaper model. There's one for entering more than one category, stuff like that. Durham, Texas mentions that he ordered some too. And yes, so a lot of individuals choose to do it. And those, it's up to the individual how they're given out. So it might be if you're wearing a pirate hat, they would come up to you and give you a ribbon. Or if you say a catchphrase from discussions on Discord or on the forums, they would give you a ribbon. So those ones are kind of fun and unexpected, and you don't know how you're going to get it. So the magazine mentions there was one called Taste the Weasel you'd get if someone saw you licking a brush. So there's just a wide variety. If you're interested in making your own to give out to people like that, I would suggest going on so if you go to reapermini.com, there's a section for forums, and then there's a ReaperCon section in there. And there's probably already like a thread that's called ribbon. Where would you get ribbons? And I wouldn't be surprised if people are discussing it on the Discord as well. But off the top of my head, I have no information on where you get ribbons. Yes, Corporea had a ribbon train taller than she is more than once, which admittedly, she's not the tallest person ever, but it's still a pretty prodigious accomplishment. And I believe she will allow people to come up to her and measure their ribbon tails against her height, if you would like to take a photograph of how impressive your ribbon tail is. Ardius asks, any tips for what to do when not in a class at ReaperCon? I'll be attending for the first time, will be by myself, and I'm wondering what there is to do in between classes. So I will probably discuss that in more detail in stream that's more about ReaperCon. But the short answer is you can paint. There's open tables for painting. You do have to bring your own supplies because the con has now reached the size where they can't have paint out for everybody anymore. And that's an easy way to meet people because they're big round tables. So you sit down and you're with a group of other people, which remember, all of those other people are like you. They're introverts who feel awkward. So let's all feel awkward together. You don't have to feel self-conscious about starting up a conversation. If you're staying at the hotels, one of the official hotels, you can meet people just at breakfast even. There are a lot of games, so you can sign up for role-playing games. There are miniatures games. I think sometimes there's game demos. My husband comes to the con, and he's always very bad about telling people about this in advance, so I'll tell you now. He runs a board game library there. So there's 2 or 3 tables set aside, and he has like a big pile of board games, and you can take one out, and he'll, if you want to, he'll show you how to play that game and play with you. If he's not already in a game with some other people, or you can just kind of take it out like you're taking out a library book and go play with some friends and then bring it back. So my husband is always there to play a game with if no one else is there. Definitely take the factory tour, and I believe this year you do have to kind of, because of the construction and COVID things and making sure everyone can hear, you need to get a ticket and sign up in advance for that. Like at the show, I don't think you have to sign up like way in advance. The games will go up on Warhorn, I believe. If maybe they're on the Reaper. Yeah, they're probably on the reapercon.com site now that I'm thinking about it. Practicing what you learn in a class is a good thing to do. Many of the artists are at tables, so we kind of have like our own little stations. You can come and ask follow-up questions, or if there was a class you couldn't get into, or you were like, I have a couple of questions about that, but I don't think I need to take a whole class on that topic. You can find the person who was instructing that class and go ask them for a few quick tips. You can get feedback on your miniatures. You can just drool on their miniatures. You can enter things in the contest, because it's actually a show, not just a contest. So you don't have to think you're a top tier painter. Everyone, you're competing against a standard. So if you go watch the show from last week when I worked on this blacksmith guy, it's fine to grab a miniature off that you play with and enter it in the show. You can paint a dedicated miniature, and if you're trying to really push your skills and you want feedback on that, do that. But it's open to, it doesn't have to be Reaper miniature. It doesn't even have to be a miniature. If you do like a garage kit, or you paint a horror bust that's like 1:2 scale or something, all of those kinds of things. There is a size limit, so check the size limit on the MSP Open before you bring something enormous. But it really is an open show in terms of the content, the painting styles, the skill levels that are welcome. Then you can go look at all of those things, because there's going to be hundreds of entries, and they're just out on tables, so you don't have to fight people to get in front of a small little case. As happens at some conventions. You can kind of walk around the room and get a good look at all the miniatures, and then there's an award show on Saturday night. I think I heard there's going to be karaoke again. There's a meet and greet. You have to have a ticket to that, so I can't remember if you buy it separately or if it's with the 4-day pass or what happens, but it's on reapercon.com. And I think there's a ribbon for that too. So that's another way to get a ribbon, is to come to the meet and greet. I feel like there's something on Friday. I do judging on Friday, so I don't know what else happens on Friday night for people who aren't judging. Sunday there's an auction, and then this year there's also going to be, so you get Reaper bucks, and what people were talking about, how you get ribbons. You also get Reaper bucks for doing activities. And you can only use Reaper bucks in the auction, so you can't use real money. But then, because not everyone stays till the auction, because it's like the last event on Sunday afternoon, I think, they're going to have like a store, I think, where you can buy some of the same things. And some of the stuff in the auction is product, but they're also like, you could get a cool blanket with the ReaperCon Sophie on it or something like that. There's neat, or phone cases. There's neat stuff like that, mugs. Those are always the kinds of things that I want to get in the auction. Usually there's arcade machines, so I don't know for sure if that's planned, but there's usually at least a couple of pinball machines, and then like some old school machines with like Centipede or Galaga or whatever other things like that. But there's definitely things to do, and keep my poor husband occupied, because I hardly get to see him during the cons. I eat breakfast with him, and that's about the end of the story. All right, so back to our guys. This was the rotting wood. And that, I think, if you know, I think that suits a skeleton well. Because this color, admittedly, is not the best. The Learn to Paint kit, I'm trying to keep things simple. So I didn't have people mix colors to get a dulled down green. But using a brown color, it gives you a more kind of grungy grave look. And so that's against the original black. And then that's against the dark green that clearly wasn't dark green enough. All right, now we had the Ritterlicht blue. And so that's the original black and the Ritter. And I mean, this would be, it's weird on grass, but this would look really cool on cloth or leather or some other things like that. Oh, I totally forgot vendors. Thanks, Inara Paints. Inara mentioned that they had a vendor punch card for a free mini in previous years. I have no knowledge of whether or not they're doing that this year, but there are vendors there. So the Reaper has a booth selling Reaper stuff, but there's other there's bombshell miniatures, there's stuff that's miniatures adjacent, there's game related things. There's a number of different, maybe people in the chat. I usually get about 10 or 15 minutes a year to go over and look at the vendors, so I'm not great at remembering everything that there is. So people in the chat, if you want to mention some other usual vendors, of course this is an unusual year, so I guess there's no way we can guarantee who's showing up. But as they start getting signed up and stuff, I think they put that on the reapercon.com page. So I do like this Ritterlicht blue a lot as a shade for that color. I don't know that it ends to grass. I mean, you know, if it was like a sylvan elven forest or something, that might be pretty cool. So that's against black, and this is that same color against the rotting wood. And I see a little part that I missed on this guy, so I'm just really quickly gonna, because hopefully that will dry before I start doing the dry brushing. All right, so where am I at? This was, wow. Was this this was the coal black, I think? Yeah, this was the coal black. So I think I must have thinned that down too much, because it really is not a very dramatic effect. So if this were not stream, I could fix that. I mean, I guess I could fix it now, but then it's not going to be dry enough to work over, possibly. But that's an example of my wash was diluted a little too much. But I think that color would work, just a little less diluted. All right, and this was the, that's funny, that looks like the purple, so I think I switched spots with those guys. And that also, for some reason, it looks like it didn't concentrate there. So this was the Styx purple. And that actually, I think, worked pretty well. As I mentioned last week, purple is a great shadow color for a lot of colors, and green is one of them. But then we'll compare that to the Gothic Crimson. And I think that it is kind of a brown, but that clash between the complementary colors and two, you know, saturated colors kind of fighting it out, there would have to be a pretty specific effect where I think that I would find that useful to use. So I think the purple was more successful than the Gothic Crimson. And let's see, this was the, so I had a reddish brown, I had mahogany brown, and it didn't dry too bad, actually. So it gives it kind of more of a patchy grass look or dead grass look. And then this was the basic dirt. I did look at earth brown, but I didn't think it was dark enough for this purpose. So, but what we experienced with the skeletons when we did this the first time is that after I add the dry brushing, it's going to change it a lot. Like the differences between the skeletons ended up being a lot more subtle at the end stage than they were at this stage. The stream disappeared. Sometimes Twitch goes funky and you need to just reboot your thing. Like it doesn't seem to be happening as much, but when Reaper first started and I was watching Reaper Live, I would have that kind of problem all the time. Or other streams, not just Reaper Live. All right, so now I'm going to start the dry brushing stage because I think they're all dry. And if I do them in the order, except now I just messed them all up. Okay, well, I may have to go back to the videotape to find out where we were. But I'm pretty sure that was the pine green. And let me consult my notebook. Yes, for additional, so Quindy mentioned if you have additional ReaperCon questions, she suggests asking in the channel on the Discord. I would also say you can ask on the forums as well. And there should be several archived threads. Sorry, I'm just scrolling back through chat to see if there's something that I missed. There should be several archive threads on the forums with people describing their experiences in previous years or, things they wish they'd brought or hadn't brought. Durham asked, isn't there a Q&A stream coming up on ReaperCon? The Q&A stream that's coming up tomorrow is on the Kickstarter fulfillment, I believe. And I'll go over the schedule of events. So I'm going to look in the guidebook that you'd think I should remember. Am I going to the con this year? Yes, I am. I'm going, and my husband will be there also running the board game library. I'm only doing 2 classes this year. I got really I think maybe I'm just getting old, but I got kind of run off my feet last year, so I'm doing 2 classes, and then hopefully we'll have more time for judging and giving people feedback after the contest and stuff like that. Okay, so the base wash. My first base color, of course, is just going to be straight Naga green. But then I did 2 steps of highlights in the book, but we'll see if we get that far. So I'll just start with the Naga green. I'll get a bunch because we have a bunch of guys. All right, so time is pressing, so I'm not going to go too far. I mean, it's not like pressing, but I'm not going to go too far into the, brushes, discussion, stuff like that. I will probably do another stream that's like just about dry brushing. This one is kind of more about washes. I like this is from a set of makeup brushes, and I like those a lot for doing dry brushing. This is a smaller area, and I have to work around his feet, so there's a little kitty. So I'll use brushes as big as this one. If we look at that by comparison, this is the size 2 that comes in I think the second large pink actually, but I'm not sure. I will, I think I used this brush a bit on the bones of the skeleton, or I might have used this one. But I went down in size a little because now that there are parts that are painted, I kind of have to work around those. I'm going to see if this kitty is still here so you can meet the kitty. Where'd you go, Diggy? Hello. There you are. Come here. Edison. Come here and say hi to everybody. Hi, city girl. So that's Allison. Or just Ella. Here, well. Here she is. She doesn't have her collar on right now because she kind of wore it out. And I'm trying to get my husband to put a new tag on the new collar, or put her old tag on the new collar. The number 2 flat is in the core scales. Okay, I couldn't remember if I put the number 4 in. I like working with a larger brush when I can, but I know that people who are new to painting feel very hesitant about it. It's a very daunting prospect to use larger brushes. So, you good girl? It is hard to paint. She's going to put her tail right in the paint. But let's see what I can do. All right. She has her claws in me. So I'll switch views. She's purring away. She's such a happy girl. So this paper towel is just for wiping my dry brush off. I want this paper towel to stay dry because dry brushing is true to the name. And I'll have a separate paper towel. Actually, I often use a sponge to just wick my brush. And I'm going to use the small one now since I'm doing this with a cat handicap. And it's nice to use these like quilted style paper towels because what you want is, so when I, well, let's get a big gloop. When I get a big gloop, the entire area of the paper towel is covered in. As I start to wipe it off, and it's just going over the tops and not into those little circles, that's when I know that it is ready. Now, can I get the miniature over here but not get green paint on my cat? There's the new challenge. You can probably see her tail coming into the stream. I'm pretty sure she has no idea what her tail is doing at any given time. I'm going to try working with the number 4 just to make this a little zippier. So there's, I don't think the number 4 is in the kit. I think Durham's right, but you can buy this from Reaper, and you can get similar flat brushes from the craft store or the art store. The makeup brushes, Elf is a good brand if you live in the US to get inexpensive makeup brushes. I bought a set for like $15 off Amazon. That, oh no, you can't go on the table though, baby. There she goes. She got bored. Okay, who is next? The rotting wood, I think. Partly I'm trying to keep them in order because they will have dried. The ones I did the wash on first will have dried. Let's see, I didn't look at cat much. Or I didn't look at chat much. Well, the cat was, yeah, cat hair is my life. So I keep a little pair of tweezers near my paint area. So when I spot a cat hair or a piece of fiber from clothes or something stuck on a miniature or in a pool of paint, I can deal with that. So this coat is to reestablish the underlying color on the protrusions, the upper areas. So we want the shadow color to just be in the crevices. Let's see. Oh, that was actually this was the coal black. This was the pine green. Yeah, pine green. It wasn't quite dark enough. So part of the reason I'm doing stuff like this and doing it on screen, when I make up a class or whatever, I test stuff out. Like I'll do a test mini, or when I made the Learn to Paint kits, and I make sure everything works before I have you do it. And most of the classes or videos that you watch are probably doing a similar thing. But the downside of that is you don't realize that or you may not realize that the people you think of as experts or who have been doing this a while, we don't necessarily just know the answers to every question. That's how we figure it out, is doing experimentation and taking risks and trying stuff. And when you do that, sometimes it doesn't work. And that's okay. That's part of the process. That's learning. So I'm doing this. I made some guesses about when I picked out the paints. I'm like, okay, well, they need to be dark enough. And I think we're going to get a weird interaction if we do it with a magenta or something. But, I expected this pine green to work as a pretty good shade for this. This one is the pine green, I think. And it just wasn't dark enough. So I guessed wrong, basically, is what I'm saying. Yeah, no failures, happy accidents. So part of my, when I was trying to figure out what do I want to do as a show, I wanted to, it's like math. I want to show the work. I want you to be able to see some of what goes into it so that you understand that it's part of the process, and hopefully make you feel more comfortable and confident about trying stuff like this yourself. I mean, if you really hate something, you can strip it and paint it again. You can buy another one and paint it again. You can just paint over it. I mean, honestly, if the detail isn't gunked up, there's like no earthly reason you can't paint over something again. So I think the purple one was next. And Reaper paints, the consistency of Reaper paints fresh from the bottle is a pretty good one for not caking up your detail, even if you do several coats. So hopefully, even if this seemed like kind of a silly thing to be doing, that's kind of what my logic is. And honestly, I don't feel like I did enough of this. And maybe I still don't do enough of this. So I'll do a lot of tests and stuff, but I don't necessarily just do kind of, let's see what happens. Usually my tests are, I'm trying to paint this thing. What can I do to make it work? What are you now? I did lose track somewhere. This one's the magenta, I think. That was the purple. This one's the magenta. So, have any of you been trying some cool experiments lately, or you did something you thought would work and it didn't come out the way you thought? You're wondering how to do it better? I don't know. We can just talk about experimenting and being okay with failure. I guess so. One of my blog posts, the blog posts aren't always related to the show, since I've been doing the blog post for 2 years and the show is pretty new. How could it be? But one of the ones I did recently kind of seemed to really strike a chord with people, and that was my suggestion that you use the good stuff. So don't save your favorite minis ever until you get good enough, and don't, pack away your favorite paint colors and never use them, even if they're out of production, because eventually they're going to thicken up and then you won't be able to use them anyway. So why not enjoy them now while they're in good condition? And I know that that's a big... I had a lot of responses from people, and people at all different levels of painting skills and interests too. It wasn't like everyone who responded in that discussion was somebody who, only just started painting and didn't feel like they should be using good materials. I had, award-winning friends who contacted me and said, yeah, I feel really like I just hoard all my stuff, and I don't, I'm always putting it off until some magic day. And it's like, don't put it off. Enjoy your stuff now, particularly if it's not, if the items in question for miniatures are not, rare special edition treasures that only 50 were made of. Why wait? There's really no reason to wait to paint it, because you can get another one. Like the vast majority of things Reaper sells, you can get another one. You can even get the Sophies now that did used to be hard to get. There's a few things. I mean, they had licensed lines for Exalted and Legend of the Five Rings, and they can't make those anymore. But a lot of those are available even in the aftermarket and stuff. So it's kind of my tip of the day, is don't hoard. And this, I wrote this partly to myself, because I have been a hoarder going way back to when I was a kid, and I would get like craft kits for Christmas, and then I would never do those. And it's like, well, the point of the gift was to, the person who gave me the gift wanted me to enjoy it. Like, what was I, okay, so if I used it, then it would be used up, but I also would have had the experience from using it. So what was my thought process there? So I'm trying to be less like that as in my old age, saving things for a rainy day. So let's see. Otter Mama says she always has issues with non-metallic metal. It can be a tricky one. And I would say that it is good to understand the principles of lighting, because she's mentioning specifically a hard time with lighting sources. But to me, non-metallic metal falls under the category of, it's more important that it looks good than it be right. And for there, my tip is something, if you watch Anne, she's probably talked about this. If you get something very dark next to something very light, that helps people's brains see something as shiny. So I will sometimes, I mean, honestly, for years, I didn't study the exact lighting on metals and all. Oh, my cat got me pretty good. I didn't see that. And people like my NMM just fine. So I would say don't let trying to be correct about it hold you back. It's more, make it look good and interesting. And then worry about over time learning the light. Let's see. Durham experimented with making a red metallic by mixing dragon gold and dragon red to paint on female Afridi. And yeah, you can make your own kind of colored metallics. Using inks or transparent paints will work even better because you'll cover up less of the metal shine. Let's see. Neural27 said, I tried non-metallic metal for the first time. I thought it was terrible until I moved a few feet away from my face and was amazed at how I looked. Yeah, and if you look at paintings in an art gallery, like flat paintings on a wall, a lot of them look very different viewed from a distance and viewed close up. Part of the trick in miniature painting is that we kind of have to do both if we can. Like, to place high level, do display stuff, be in the showcase. If you're painting for your games, like, looking good at a couple feet away is the goal. But I'm saying if you're trying to do like a gift or a display level or a fancy contest entry, then you start working on just fixing the transitions or whatever looks a little rough to get it to work at both distances. Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. The rule of cool. You don't have red ink. So if you go to, they sell some of these sometimes in the like Michael's and Joann's type stores, but sometimes you have to go to an art store. Acrylic ink is really transparent acrylic paint. So the Reaper Clears would be a good thing to use. Reaper does not sell a lot of inks. So they have like a flesh and a black, I think. So you'll either have to need to buy that from another company that sells miniature painting inks, but let me see if I can just get back here to get some examples. So you can buy these from the art store. This is acrylic paint. It mixes perfectly well with acrylic paint. Don't buy Winsor Newton. I think theirs are still true inks, which you can use, but people who used to use true inks experienced some problems back in the day. So I think it's better to just stick with the Dollar Ranny. FW Dollar Ranny is another company. And then these are golden, so they don't call it ink because Golden's deal is not calling things they are not. So they call all of their stuff acrylic paint. This is acrylic paint. It's just transparent acrylic paint. And you can see the transparency. So this is their high flow. Yeah, high flow. High flow is Golden's equivalent to Liquitex acrylic ink. So it's a very watery and transparent product. And when I say watery, I don't mean there's a lot of water in it. It's still acrylic binder. It's just a more fluid acrylic binder. And the same thing with the ink, the Liquitex ink. All right. Now I forgot what goes on the ground. So 2 drops Naga green mixed with 1 drop candlelight yellow. I'm going to jump to the brighter highlight, I think, and do a half and half. Although I'll mix this and see. I mean, this candlelight yellow is a lot of yellow. I actually, Minkslet said that's the best description of Golden products I've ever heard. I respect Golden for just being upfront about it, because Liquitex has really confused people, because now they have something called acrylic gouache. And it's acrylic paint. It's not gouache. Gouache is a specific type of paint. But what Golden's trying to say is, and I've seen talks with the Liquitex reps. I'm not interpreting this for them. Is that it's an acrylic paint that has the properties people like from gouache. So it's flat, matte, and it's fairly fluid. Basically, it's miniatures paint, actually. And then recently, Golden did the same thing, but they called it they called it So Flat Matte Acrylics. So they're like, it's an acrylic paint, but it self levels and it's matte. And I respect they're not confusing, because people get very confused about this. I know a lot of people talk about inks in the miniature hobby, and the past few years I've realized they're not using ink. They're not using the classic inks that people were using 20 years ago when I started miniature painting, and there were a lot of complaints about how those could be reactivated and stuff. They're not using that. They're using fluid acrylic paint. All right, so I'll begin with, this is the classic out of the box guy. I think I need a new section for wiping the brush. And now things are going to get a little more interesting, because there's yellow and green, but we've increased the amount of yellow that is being added to the color mixes. So now we have more colors interacting with one another, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So that's kind of the traditional look. This is the pine green, kind of didn't do much wash. To be fair on the acrylic gouache thing, other companies did start that first, although they call it acrylic gouache usually instead of acrylic gouache. And there is something, like, I would use Liquitex acrylic gouache on miniatures. I would not use the other products that I've seen called aqua gouache. I think that they are subject to cracking and should not be applied to flexible materials, just like traditional gouache. So if I were trying to paint just standard normal grass, using a darker green, I like that better than the look of the black. A little more highlight on the black, maybe. That's a bit better. All right, then we have the... Oh no, I feel like I messed it up now. Oh, nope, this is the rotting wood, I'm pretty sure it is. So this is like a dark khaki brown green wash. So it should give more of a like swampy look, would be my guess. Where are we time-wise? Okay, we're good. So that's more of a kind of classic green, and that's more of a swampy green, which fits a skeleton better, I think, a little. Although, I guess a skeleton could pop up in a very well-maintained churchyard. This is the very popular Ritterlich Blue. I mean, very popular as a color. I don't know if it's going to be very popular as a shade color for grass. My guess is no, but I do think it would. I mean, if you imagine this on cloth or something, you get a neat interaction between the blue and the shadows and then the yellow and the highlights. It makes it much more dynamic than just a straight darker green, lighter green type of shadow to highlight idea. All right. This was the coal black that I don't think I put enough on. So people who are wondering why they should get the holiday set, this is not a good demonstration of how awesome coal black is. No, for non-miniature painting purposes, a gouache paint is going to be very different than an acrylic gouache. But at least the companies all seem pretty good about putting the acrylic on there. But if you've just kind of heard about gouache in passing, it's very hot right now in the traditional art world. you are not going to be getting to enjoy a lot of the properties of gouache if you get an acrylic gouache, because it does not reactivate. Hello Raiders, welcome to my stream. So what I'm doing today is, oh my, and there's a great many of you. What I'm doing today is an experiment with using different wash colors on the same base color, and then using the same colors to highlight with. So this is like a really rich deep blue. This is kind of a brown green. This one, is this one the magenta? No, I've lost track of some of them. But and a similar experiment was done earlier in another stream with the skeleton bones. But most of the colors worked with that, because essentially I was just mixing, light gray with other colors. When we start mixing more saturated colors together, it gets a little funkier. So that's what the experiment is today. These are all the colors that got mixed on or washed on to the just a standard, pretty saturated green color. The face cam appears to be frozen. Yes, it does. All right, we will go to just this, because I would probably have to get up and fix something to do that. So that's, it's a separate camera in another part. Like I'd have to go back around behind the desk to fix that. So I will just keep going, and you don't have to look at my frozen face. If it wasn't pretty close to the end, maybe I'd have tech support come and fix that. Tech support being my husband, who works from home currently. So this is a magenta color, actually. So it's this one. I already did a dry brush with the original color, and now I'm going over it with this. So in this particular situation, I'm doing washes and dry brushing, but it also gives us some ideas for colors to mix in for shadows using layering or wet blending or other techniques. Like I was, just before the Raiders got here, I was talking about how this dark blue, which is actually this very vivid blue, you can mix some really pretty shadow colors in greens with that, and then you use yellows in the highlights, and you get some pretty cool effects. So this was purple. It's kind of a slightly dull purple. Nomad Zeke, I can't blame Bug Lives. He's not even here, is he? I can't blame him for stuff when he's not here. Where's the fun in that? Okay, so that's, and I think the purple works pretty well. Like if you look closely at it, you'd probably be able to see the purple, but from, even a bit of a distance away, it kind of just looks shadowy. Like I think if I wanted this guy to look like he was kind of in more of a moonlight effect, I mean, obviously I'd have to change the skeleton part as well, but that gives a nice effect. We should have done a purple on one of the skeletons. I didn't think about that when I was doing the bones. He's the resident scape goblin for a reason. Well, I guess that's true. If my paint goes missing, that's definitely who I blame. But Bug Lips shall never know of my secret paint hoard. So this was a red-brown. There, I think, yeah. So that's a reddish-brown, which I wanted to try because since red is the complement of green. And once I didn't love it when it was applied just as the wash, but now that the highlights are on there, I think this one's okay. I think I'm liking that all right. And then this was more of a plain brown, which was this one. Yeah, I don't, in the end, I think the reddish brown may look cooler than this one. But this one, too, it just gives you some ideas, like, you know, that there are dead spots in between, or just ground in between, that it's not all just, you know, a lawn. It's like out in the meadow. But I think I kind of like the reddish brown better in the end. In a way, it sort of fades in, unless I mixed up which was which is very possible. Perhaps this was the reddish brown. That probably makes sense. This is why I should label them or something. I could have written in Sharpie and then written on the holders for those guys. So I think that was all of them. So I'll do a quick comparison. Actually, before I do a quick comparison, I said I would do a similar thing on the stone. So just to make things easy, I think I'll just pick washes that I already have prepared. So we'll do the coal black, which has probably thickened up a little. But I could put a little more in there. So when I add paint to a wash and I do want to make sure that it's just a little, I'll do something like that. I'll put it off to the side and then mix it in. Because otherwise I can just end up in this cycle of I add paint, then I have to add water, then I have to add paint, then I have to add water. Oh. Yes, I really am this clumsy. It is amazing how I ever paint anything. And don't break it. So hopefully I won't have to use a hairdryer on that. Let's see. Some of these colors may not be dark enough. Well, we'll give it a shot. We'll do the crazy red alert blue and see what happens. And I think it's just going to be too insane. It's too saturated a color over very unsaturated color. And over his toes now, too. But lucky for me, I hadn't painted that skeleton yet. Someday I'll get these guys all finished up. And then give them to my husband. Or D&D games. So mostly that's just going to look ridiculous. But we can say he's in some kind of blue crystal cavern or something. Because if you look at rock, there really are a lot of different colors of rock. But normally I would do this in a more deliberate way, where I looked at rocks and then tried to create something that kind of mimicked that effect. Which one would be interesting? Well, we didn't get to use the gobbler green, so I'll just mix up a little quick wash here with the gobbler green. Which may not be dark enough for that stone value. I'll just go with it. Well, I can mix in a little bit of black. Painted toenails on a skeleton. Actually, I think that might be kind of fun. You know, people do get kind of gussied up before they get laid to rest. So there's no reason some skeletons shouldn't be kind of stylish. And this is the same thing I would do with, so this was the green that wasn't quite dark enough to work as a wash, I think. And I would have done the same thing. I would have added a little of a dark blue or a little touch of black to just make that a smidge darker to work better for creating shadows. All right, so those guys can dry while we do a comparison with the finished versions of the skeleton. Well, skeletons aren't at rest now, but they were at rest before they became skeletons. So this is the, out of the Learn to Paint kit figure. So this has a black wash and then the same green and yellow that I just put on the others. So let's see. This is the pine green that wasn't quite dark enough, I think. But it's a nice subdued. Of all of them, I think it's kind of the most subdued if you don't want the grass to be drawing attention. Something like this is probably going to be what you're after. And then it was the rotting wood one. Is this it? See, this is why I should have written stuff down. Those are the browns. No, I know what one that is. This is the rotting wood, I think. So that is that color. It's like a dark khaki green, but there's a bit of brown in it too, which you can certainly see come up against this more vivid green. Then we did wear like blue, which, while I don't know that it suits grass exactly, I like this color combination a lot. I think that's a great color to use to shade bright greens or saturated greens. And then it works well with the yellow highlight too. And you can see that even though it's actually not a darker color than the black, in some ways it feels like it has more depth than the black. And that's what you can get from playing around with a little bit of colors. And I think the purple may do a similar thing. But first we have the magenta. I think that was it. Yeah, and the crooks of his feet. So the magenta actually, once the highlighting and the shading got on there, it really did turn into brown in a way, because green and red, and magenta is a form of red, are color complements, and if you mix them together, you'll get browns, and we essentially visually mix them together. So each of the layers is separate, but you're seeing the lower layer through the wash, and then you're seeing the wash through the upper layers. So it's kind of the same idea as mixing a paint. You will get some different effects applying things separately. Josh Ramos said this episode will be subtitled Rhonda Throws Shade, which is funny. And it kind of is what I'm doing, I guess. So the magenta ended up, when I first put it on, I thought, oh, this is insane. But it ended up working better than I thought. I don't know if it's like my favorite one, but it's not terrible. This one is purple, which I think has a kind of similar effect to the blue, but it works a little better in the context of this being grass. So even though the purple wasn't as dark as this black, you still get an effect of depth. It's not as dramatic. You can see the highlighted portions of the upper areas a little more on the one that was the darker shadow, but I could add another layer of highlights and get a similar level of contrast, and I would probably do that. I may do that after the stream. Add just not, I would probably not even scrub. I would just kind of touch the brush to the tops to just get it to be very lightly applied with either pure yellow or just the yellow with a bit of green in it. So I like with the purple. Then this one was coal black, but I feel like I had user error here and I thinned it down too much. So it's not a very dramatic effect, and you're not getting a lot of the blue-green effect in the undertone of coal black. Let's see. So then we had the two browns. And this was the more reddish brown. And in a way, the red and green are almost fighting because they're similar values, and I think it just didn't work as well as the brown that was like just a brownier brown. It's there's less distinctive color in the basic dirt brown compared to the reddish brown mahogany. So picking between those two, I would probably go with the dirt brown to give kind of a, you know, not unplowed field, but just like a random field instead of a lush yard type of look, I guess. So hopefully that made sense. My rock experiments aren't quite dry, but we can get a look at it. I mean, the blue clearly is ridiculous. Unlike when we made that work with the shadow bone, I'm not sure that going over it with the, you know, doing the dry brushing and washing, I'm not sure would fix that, but who knows. But I'm liking the darker green color, and I'm liking the coal black for the rocks. This you'd kind of have to be going for a special effect, I think. I will probably try to finish those up and then include them in the photographs when I put it on my blog, but we'll see. But I could try adding a little more highlight, but I want to make sure that I also talk about what else is coming up this week. So I will mix a paint and see if I can do that at the same time, which may be exceeding my multitasking capabilities, but we'll see. So for people who came in later, if you are attending ReaperCon or other conventions and there are things that you might like to see demonstrated on stream or that we talk about, go ahead and say in the chat or go somewhere I might see it. I admittedly have trouble remembering to go on the Reaper Discord. I'm trying to get better about that. Well, I have trouble remembering to go on Discord at all, but I am trying to get better about that. But, you know, I have my own Facebook page on my blog. I don't want to make all of... Oops, I went the wrong way with that. I don't want to make all of the stuff I do on my stream for the next 2 months about ReaperCon, but, you know, after a year and a half of absence, we are starting to go back to conventions. So if people have questions or they're thinking about attending their first convention, it seems like a good time to address some of that. So this seemed a bit gloopy, so I am just adding a smidge of water, even though it's for dry brushing. But now let's talk about the other delights you can enjoy on Reaper's Twitch channel the rest of the week. So tomorrow you get Michael Proctor and Jason Wiebe on The Crow's Nest, and that starts at 5 p.m. But then tomorrow is something that I don't think it's on the schedule graphic, but there's also a Q&A for Kickstarter fulfillment questions at 6:30. And those times are in Central. So all times that I'm listing are in Reaper time of Central. Then on Wednesday, you get the Miniatures Den. And thanks again, Miniature Den Raiders, for coming to visit us at 2 p.m. Also Central. Am I on screen? No, I am not. Let's see. Then Thursday is always a good day because you get Reaper Live, which is where you can win things, and that's at 6 p.m. But during the day at 2 p.m. you get the Crafty Creative with Josh Foreman, and he, like, where I am like almost all paint all the time, he is like doing all kinds of cool construction, and he's just like an all-around general craft art cool guy. So there's lots of neat things there. And then Friday, you have Reaperland at 3 p.m. And this week is, as Michael Proctor would say, the best show on the Reaper Twitch lineup is Reaper Errant, which is where myself and some of the other artists, so some sculptors and some painters, get together and we play a Dungeons and Dragons game that is run by Nightheart Gaming, and they have like amazing table board setups, and they have like all these different camera views and stuff. It's really fun to watch. Like I usually play in very simple, you know, either theater of the mind, or maybe we've got a map and we're throwing a few guys and some bottle caps out so that we have some vague idea of where people are strategically. But this is like a whole experience of cool, awesome miniatures and terrain and scenery and stuff, and there's sound effects. He put snow on screen once. It's really fun. So I have a ton of fun with that. Hopefully you guys have fun watching too. I don't know. My cat shows up in that one more regularly. And then on Saturday Sadie, who is the person who mixes the paint. So Ann Forster designed the core line and the Bones paints, but she left a year or two ago. It was just after. I think she moved just after the whole lockdown stuff started to lift a little bit. So she's still involved with Reaper, and she does her stream every day. Well, every weekday at 11:30 a.m. is Ann's stream, which I think I did forget to mention. But now Sadie is the main paint designer and mixer at Reaper, and then she has her show on Saturdays. So I think that was everything. Periodically, there is, I did mention Reaperland, right? Reaperland is Friday at 3 p.m. And that's John and Dave have a lot of fun and share stuff from the community and all kinds of cool stuff. But there's no set schedule. It's like the phases of the moon, and when things coalesce is House of Vex with Aaron Lovejoy, who will show you how to use your airbrush, which is very... He helped me go from someone who was deathly afraid of using the airbrush to someone who feels basically competent and confident with it. So if he can help me, he can help anyone. So all right, I'll try going back here, but I suspect it's still frozen. Yep, it's still frozen. So we'll, it's very small things I'm trying. So we'll stay here. I don't know that these guys dried enough, but I will show these ones off. I think I do like that I put that extra little highlight on top. Always more contrast, right? Always more contrast than you feel comfortable with. And one day I'll finish these skeletons. So they will probably show up once more to talk about batch painting. And then I'll stop torturing you guys with these. But not right away. I like to mix things up. So we'll do swatches next week, and I'll try to have some of the paper samples out and some discussions of various ways of swatching. I think I have one thing I forgot to show last time. And then I will scan the colors and put them up, because the things look pretty good on camera, but they're not, it's not exactly color true. Like when I go and watch the videos again later, some things look darker than they really are. And you want to see my ReaperCon entries. Just go look at whatever's in the Reaper store that I painted for them lately. I actually, I did not. So 2019 was kind of a tough year for me. We did some renovations in our house, and we had a minor flood as well as planned renovations, and it kind of upended my whole life. And so my rooms got moved around and things were packed away. It was just very disruptive and stressful. And then right when we were like kind of trying to get back to normal and finish up, 2020 happened. So I've had, and I know I'm not the only person by any stretch of the imagination who rolled into 2020 already at a disadvantage, but I have not gotten a lot done, and I particularly have not gotten a lot of high-level painting done. I find it a lot harder than I used to just sit and do something tedious for a long stretch of time. So I've been having more fun doing like quick paints and goofing around and stuff like that when I've been painting at all. So I don't think I'm unlike most people who apparently have been just putting together all of these fantastic entries for, with their extra year, and the contest room is probably going to blow us away. Hey, Sidwi. I am not going to be blowing anything away. I'm going to bring the stuff I've done for, Reaper, or, I have a Dark Sword thing I'm trying to finish up, but it ended up being a hard project because it's meaningful to me as well as being something with expectations for the client. So it's one of those things that has been hard for me to paint, but I am trying to improve my mental health and get back on the horse, as it were, with things. So I'm being honest with you guys, and I've talked about some of this on the blog and stuff. There's a post on one of the Christmas figures, the little dragon. There's a gold dragon sitting on a pile of presents. Painting that much non-metallic metal was just, oh my gosh, that was tough. Painting the Afridi, the male Ifrit, but he was called something else. Fire Scion. I think he's called the Fire Scion. That was really, those are hard colors to paint. That took a lot of patience, and honestly, the back of that miniature is not finished. The back of the female miniature isn't finished, even when my sanity was a little fuller. That was beyond my patience level. So those are things I need to go back to once I kind of get my stuff together. But I think it's worth being honest with you guys about it, because I'm sure that some of you have had similar experiences where things have just gotten tough, or you had, it's like, just mix it up. If you can't handle doing one thing, do something else. Like, don't fence yourself in with more expectations on top of whatever else is happening in your life. Like, if you need a break, take a break. If you can't handle a pandemic and forcing yourself to get better at miniature painting, like, it's okay to not force yourself to get better at miniature painting right now. But anyway, that kind of went afield. It's probably time to find someone to raid. I still don't have the screen thing that I'm supposed to have. And I was going to hold up a paper that just said something like, thanks for watching, because that's what my screen thing is supposed to say. But now I can't even do that because my face cam froze. So you just watch my hands waving goodbye while we head off to, we're raiding Josh Foreman, so you can go see how creative he is right now. So thanks everyone for coming. I'll post pictures of these, and I'll see you next week, I hope. Bye.